Hi, Dirk-Jan. I'm Janina, and I'm a Senior Academic Alliance Manager at Celonis. And within our Academic Alliance Department, we're supporting educational institutions all around the world to integrate process mining into their courses. And I'm happy to have a talk again with you as one of our longest partners that we have. And yeah, I'm happy to share our experiences that we had in partnership and see what you have done so far. So feel free to introduce yourself and yeah, tell us a bit more about what you're doing.
Okay, I will. Well, my name is Dirk-Jan Schenk. I'm teaching SAP for about 25 years now at our school. And a few years ago, I think almost 5 years ago, we started to use Celonis. And of course, in our effort to get more process-oriented, but I think we'll get back to that later. Perhaps I can tell you something what we are doing now at this moment.
Yeah, feel free.
With SAP in general. And then we'll focus on the part that we, from our SAP education, that we're really using the Celonis part. Mm-hmm. Of course, well, we are teaching SAP in various ways. In the S4, GBI, we use it for the second year, and we use the standard UCC material. We also do it in the fourth year for the accountancy students, business economics students. We have our own book about the GBI exercises, and we'll show you something about that too. But the main thing is what is called the BPS, the Business Process Simulation, or Business Organization Simulation, or Supply Chain Lab. It is actually the same module with different names. That's the main thing what we do, and that's for third-year students doing a minor. And they're from all kinds of countries, all kinds of studies, from business economics, international business, some IT, HRM, whatever. They're all coming together in those modules. And of course, we have other parts of our minor BPA, business process and analytics, and we also do success factors there, supply chain management, treasury management, and controlling. That's the main thing what we are doing with SAP at our school. And if we go focusing on the BPS part, well, that's what we do. And that's something I think is still unique in the world. We have ongoing companies, and we started them more than 20 years ago. And we started, of course, with the old R3 2.1. For the old people, perhaps they remember it. But now we are on the latest ERP on HANA, and as soon as possible, we're going to the S4. The thing with those companies, and you see one company, their oldest company is Phony. It's an imaginary simulation company for mobile phones, production company. And you see the structure of the company. And the main thing what we do there is that we continue. We continue every semester with a new group of students, but the company goes on. So for normally, if you have a simulation like ERP Sim, you play the game, and at the end of the game, you just stop. And then the next group can start playing the same game. But at our school, it's not really a game, it's more like a real company. And so every half year, a new group of students take over, and the company will change and develop over the years. For example, our first phone was called the Disco 99. It was a very amazing new mobile phone. Of course, no one will call a phone anymore a Disco 99, but that's how we started. And over the years, we have new phones. We have now hybrid phones. We have company phones. We have all kinds of special things. And you can see in the history of the data of the company what has happened over the years. Mm-hmm. So it is a real company. It feels like a real company. It looks like a real company. And it has a structure like a real company. That's what it is. And we have 4 companies like that running. We have Phony, that's the company with the mobile phones. We have Shemi, that's a chemical company, green company, probably producing chemical products, but trying to get more and more green. Our latest company is Divaya. That is a trade and events company. We will show something example from there too. And 3PH is a packaging company, also focusing on green. And they're working more or less together in the supply chain. So those are the 4 companies that we have up and running. You will see the names later, I think.
That's super nice. It's very realistic and very applied teaching that we see here. So if you go from that setting and you already had like the very realistic setup, so why did you then choose to add process mining as a skill to that, or as a module? Like how did you come up with that idea, and how did you get started then?
Well, the main thing is, of course, is what we discovered already quite soon after a few years doing a simulation with SAP R3, that the main thing is the integrated business process. And that's the main thing, and that's the hardest thing to explain. I think that if you go to any UCC meeting, any University Alliance meeting, actually SAP systems are not the real problem. The real problem is to convince people, students, how important processes are. And it is very hard to explain them. If you look at the process in a diagram way, you see this is one of the pages from our book. That's how the diagrams for processes, you can have all kinds of diagrams, but they're very abstract. And students don't think that they really act according to such a diagram. A diagram is just some, theoretical model for a process, but it doesn't feel things. And one of the things that we discovered while doing this process simulation is that people really are feeling the processes. That's much more than just seeing an abstract diagram. They get angry. You say, well, I'm waiting for that sales order, and purchasing or someone else is not producing those phones, and why they're not doing that? Well, then you have to find out who is before me in the process. Well, it's the logistics control. Well, they said, well, we've done our work, but still there's nothing happening. Well, sometimes it depends on production or purchasing or whatever. So they feel that they really are in one company and they are having one process. And if one department is obstructing the process, the whole change stops. And normally it's the salespeople who get mad about that. But sometimes the other people are sometimes corporate people, or the people in the controlling get angry because they don't see any real cost, because everyone is just testing or whatever. Things like that happen. So the next step from just feeling and doing a step in SAP is to get to feel, emotionally feel processes. Get angry, get happy if everything goes smooth, but they feel processes. And the next step, and then someone from a company introduced us process mining. And from the first day I was interested, and I think that's almost 10 years ago. And from the first day I was really interested, because I think then they can see the processes they did. So there is an interaction between what they're doing, really doing, and what they're feeling and what is happening in the company. So I think that one of the most important things, and that's what Celonis finally helped us to do, is to get the real connection between what you do and what you see in Celonis and what's happening. The first time they are looking at it, they say, oh, well, that's the process I just did. Oh, now I see why the others are not doing their work, because of whatever. So that's why we went to process mining.
It's such a great experience for the students at such an early level, because I mean that's something that if you work as in a company and you start then early in your career, you make this connection usually for the first time from like the models that you see in the teaching books to like what you actually do in a company, and then you often don't even have that connection to your being able to see that and evaluate what has happened before. And your students really do that at a very early level, and the full process of experience in the process. So that's really cool. But how do you do it? Like, how are the courses with process mining set up, and what do the students have to do to learn these skills and to make these experiences?
Well, again, the same as, or even more for Celonis than for SAP. The system is not the real problem. Mm-hmm. The problem is to get the processes between years to really know what you're doing. And well, if you're referring to real companies, our data are quite real. If I've seen some demonstrations from Celonis and other process mining tools that about 1/3 of the normal purchases go according to the developed or the idea about the process, how it was developed, how it was designed. And if you look at our data, it is the same thing. But if you hear about from students, they say, well, of course, we are just students, we are making mistakes. In real companies, they don't make mistakes. And that's, I think that you have some other things, seen some other things. But on the other hand, it's also to see that there are different possibilities. There's not only one right way of doing things. And that's what we discovered also. Well, if you look at what we are doing, well, we have some of the things up and running. So a normal sales department, you can see very small letters, but you see month 400, that's a chemical company. And you see a limited time. So in this case, the people from the sales department can see exactly how they are doing at that moment, how much orders they have created, how much sales deliveries have been created, etc., etc. So everything can be analyzed. And here they see their own processes as they have done in their own semester and how they're doing. And you see, for example, there are some that stop the end of the process. That's one of the things that they say, well, that's strange. When I look at it, there are some processes that stop at create invoice or stop at record goods issue. Why? What's happening? Well, that's where you stopped. And then well said, well, we did do the record goods issue. We did create the invoice. No, you did not create all the invoice. Oh, then we have to look at it again. And the incoming payments, why are they not there? Our customer said everything was paid. Who is responsible for that? So they get to questions. They see what's happening in here, in a picture like that, and that's what we call the operational use. They see what's happening, what they're doing, and they also see how they're doing. So normally, for those departments, we have developed our own. In this case, we used most of it. For the first things we used are the purchase and the sales department, and we used the standards from Celonis, and that can be used almost immediately operational. But we have made some adjustments to make it real fit to our company. And that's once it is used, it is implemented, it is used by companies. So if the students hand it over from a process, first, of course, we try to develop something. And then we say, okay, now we know how we can use as a sales department Celonis. So the next group, the next semester, that's the advantage of having ongoing companies. The next group can use it in their daily work. So that's one of the ways we are using, and I would not say teaching Celonis, but we are using Celonis. And one of our principles of teaching is that normally we as teachers, we are talking, like I'm talking now, I should not do that, but as teachers, we are talking and we give solutions to problems students don't have. And I think that the first thing is that they should get to a problem. So if they are responsible for being a sales department and they look at this Celonis thing, then they start asking questions and they start having problems. And then we can look for the solutions together. And sometimes I do know the solutions and sometimes I don't know.
But it's brilliant. And also, I mean, I think what's so unique is also that they work in a group from the start. So they have to collaborate to not only find the solutions, but also to implement them. And then again, they can already see if those solutions work or not. So it's a bit like trial and error, but they also have the tool at hand to understand it in a good way. And that's really like it's the full cycle, and it's the full implementation cycle that they're doing. And that's great. And it's also great that they kind of use that in like one semester and then hand it over to another group. So sometimes you also have to work with things that you haven't even done before, but then you get something handed over and you have to deal with it. And that also teaches them a lot.
Yeah, and sometimes they have documented it well, and sometimes a little bit worse. Well, of course, then the next group can always improve.
Yeah.
And that's also something that is also like real life. If you take over a new job from someone else, then they say, well, how could I have ever worked this job? Because there's hardly any good documentation. There are mistakes in the documentations. It's old. I don't understand it. Well, that's quite normal if you take over. So it will take some time to understand the complete situation and the complete complexity of your department. And of course, since we have mid-sized companies with quite complex products, it is a complex thing, and it will take some time to understand what you're doing. And this helps to understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
But if we look at the next step, this is more the development part. That's what you first saw is the results of some development, and this is an example of development. And what you also mentioned is how good it is to see the consequences of what they're doing. Well, I think this is a very good example what has happened in our company, and it was not deliberately, but one group was asked to, okay, look at the sales process at our company. And then they discovered and said, well, we see there a change delivery block. Why? What's happening there? Well, and it's not happening a few times, but almost a third of the case has a change of delivery block. That's strange. For example, a change price, it only happens 10 times, but more than 100 times over almost 300 cases, that's not normal. That's strange. And I didn't know what was happening there either. So together with the group of students who discovered that, we tried to see what was behind it in the system. And then we noticed that there was a problem with credit limits. That was the reason why there was always a delivery block on every sales order. And well, I didn't know that because the sales department had somewhere a small line in their process manual. You enter a sales order, you remove the delivery block, and you continue. That was normal daily work. So I never noticed it. There was no one asked me, well, why did we have to remove that delivery block? Well, it was just standard procedure. So then we said, well, this should not be standard procedure.
Yeah.
And then we had a special project that started the way you see it at the left diagram, the left one. And then we said, okay, now we're going to do something about it. About the credit limits. And they discovered that the credit limits were, well, we have business to business and not business to consumer. So if you sell phones, 100,000 phones or 10,000 phones to a company, and you have a credit limit of 1,000 euros, everything will go over that credit limit. So it's a real problem. So we adjusted the credit limits to our customers, to our normal customers. Fortunately, we don't have 1,000 customers, only 10 customers, like something like that.
Nice.
Customers. So we, of course, that's quite normal in the business to business. You don't have that many customers. So we adjusted the credit limit per customer, and then they can run the Celonis again. But then you see that there's another time data range, and since there's another date range, they can see the result, what is before the project and after the project. And what we always want, and that's what you also saw with everything else in Celonis, we always want every project. We have a lot of projects, also projects with Analytics Cloud or whatever, taking new things, using new things from SAP. But if we specialize, focus on the Celonis project too, we always want something having implemented. Normally, students have an assignment saying, okay, you have to analyze the process. And then they analyze the process and they say, well, we have analyzed the process and we see there's a problem with the communication. So we advise the company to improve the communication. End of report.
Yeah.
And of course, end of the advice, nothing will happen. So we always will focus the students in our business simulation that the result of the project should be implemented. So they always think, well, this is a very small project, just setting credit limits. No, it's not a small project. It took them also a few months, I think 3-4 months, to get everything figured out, how credit limits work in SAP, how you can analyze them with Celonis, and how it should be implemented. And then finally they did. And then finally they can see the results of the improved process in Celonis. And that's what I think it should be, how it should work. You analyze something, you implement an improvement, and you analyze again, and you see the improvement. And I think that's quite essential in what you're doing. And the fact that you see in the improvement, that you see now we have only 4 change of delivery blocks. Of course, it won't ever be perfect, but you see it's only 1%, or either, no, it's 5%, I think.
But it's pretty good. And I mean, they see that they have kind of a successful implementation and they can see what changes, but they could also see if it changes not, and they can really like learn from what they're doing. And what I also like about it, I mean, now the system is kind of telling them what happened, and you as a teacher can kind of take on another role. You're more like the coach, helping them, advising them a little bit, but you're not the one who has to track necessarily their success in their learning. You can be in their learning journey with them together. And that's like, I think also a very interesting change of roles for you, right?
Yeah, of course. But it makes it much more fun. Yeah. Because normally if you have a project and you do know the solution of the project, and a lot of teachers don't want to start teaching if they don't know the solution. And well, we think that if we do know the solution, it is not a real project. Sometimes students call it an apple pie project. Otherwise, the teacher wants an apple pie, and if he doesn't get a good apple pie, he's not satisfied. So he knows the outcome. And in this case, we didn't know the outcome. We were just hoping that it would improve. And of course, sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes this project is not successful, but they can explain what has happened and what they have researched, and they say, well, we tried it that way, and perhaps the next group can do it the other way. But it is happening like that. Yeah. And well, but the proof, but they're also getting really satisfied. I don't have to satisfy them by giving them a good grade. They are if they see something like this, they'll say, yes, we made it. This is why they are glad. And afterwards they said, are you really so glad just because of that number 4? Yes, we are.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You did a great job. So
it's a bit like a game, right? So they like
not like a game, it's real.
The numbers, yeah.
Yeah, they're really involved, and it's not a game, and they're so proud in finding their own solutions. But sometimes it's even worse. I can show you another example.
I like that one a lot with the project development.
In this case, well, if you say, what is the role of you as a teacher? In this case, I was just really the IT person. They said, well, we like to, in this one of the companies, the event companies, and we like to analyze the processes around the events. But they're not SQL experts, so the only role I took is to prepare a data set for Celonis to analyze the process of the events. So that's what I did. And then together with the students, we start analyzing. But the same thing, now we got working on several levels. The first thing that they discovered is, well, if you analyze that, you get far too much. So we had to limit ourselves. We don't want to see every step in the system, only limited steps. Okay, then we did. But the thing in here is that the activities, the names of the activities are the names of the WBS elements, the process steps in a project. And that's a problem because those names are put in manually. And if you don't have a standard for it, you get all kinds of strange names. So finally they said, well, we are not able to really analyze the whole process, but we think that the first thing for us, and that was last semester we did this project, is the first thing that we should do is to standardize the names of the WBS elements.
Nice.
And since we don't have that many events, they were able to adjust the names of the events of last semester. And then they said, okay, now we have a set of data that are that way standardized that we think that the next group can start analyzing. So in this case, they're really focusing on data, really focusing on what is necessary to be able to get those analyses done in Celonis. Then you really, sometimes if you see a nice, and I know that Celonis gives a lot of nice example of all kinds of things, but it's not interactive because you're not able to change the data. And now they are able to change the data because if they change the names in the SAP system, automatically the analysis is changing. So they really see against the consequences. And I didn't have to do anything because by changing the name in the system, and then you get the data out of the system, and then it is analyzed again. So that was really working well.
Nice. So it's like a real-time connection, and they can really like see it immediately.
It is a real-time connection, and they can see the difference, what is happening there. And that makes it great, of course.
That's brilliant. And they also learned that sometimes it's not so much like the business problem, like not like one department not really working as we've seen it before, but here in this case, it's more of a data management problem. And that also happens a lot and is one of the challenges of digitalization.
Of course, yeah. And it's, of course, and then you see that Celonis or process mining or any data mining, first thing is that you have to figure out what is the single point of truth. And if you have all kinds of strange names, and they say, okay, well, they're not according to the standard procedure. No, why not? Because once it is called marketing and the next time is create marketing. Okay, if you have different names, it's not a problem that the process is wrong, but the data are wrong.
Yeah.
And that just figuring out from one step to changing data, changing analysis, going back to analysis. You see, they're working on a lot of levels that way. And that's very nice.
It's super interesting to see that. But so what do your students say? Do you get feedback from them of what they're learning, or like what do you see them doing? How do you see them evolve while doing the class?
Well, of course, one of the things is that by having the real-time connection, we do that every day at 11 o'clock. And since the data are updated every day at 11 o'clock, and that took some effort from you and from UCC Munich and us, good cooperation to get this thing working. So we connect to our system, we get the SQLs, the data from the HANA, and then we upload it in every day to Celonis. That's why students can see daily, because from 8:30 to 9 to 11 they work in the department, and after 11 they start working in a project. We have a metrics organization.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and what you see then, what students do is they like to work with Celonis. They like to play with it. And that's always the nice thing. If they're presenting their results, they always start first with a lot of stories about process mining. I said, don't do that. Start with the results from Celonis. And once you see that, you're automatically fascinated. So that's also why I started as soon as possible now to show you examples, because those examples say so much, and they automatically start working with it, playing with it, and that's what they do like.
That's brilliant.
The big difference for them is to understand the difference between the processes that happen in Celonis and as they were designed in a diagram. That's quite a difference. And it's for them quite hard to understand the difference, because it's not how I want it. The happy path is not a happy path because it's how we want it, but it is called the happy path because it is happening the most of the times. As sometimes it is not even the happy path. So they should get out of the right and wrong mode and turn into a gray mode. Say, okay, for example, we have products that are produced on stock and products produced on sales order. And what is right and what is wrong? No, they're two different ways. And normally at teaching, we always say, this is right and this is wrong. No, get to the gray mode. And the other thing, what I think is quite strange for us, is that they think that something like Celonis, once they're working it, well, it's normal. And they expect any company working with it. And if they go to a company that any company is having those same analysis too. So for them, it's quite normal. And they don't see that is how special that is this to see your real processes depicted. So sometimes I think that's something we should explain to them. And that they should not be amazed that not any company is working with Celonis. But perhaps, well, that's of course why you support us. We also have students that come from doing Make IT Work. Those are students who already have a bachelor or a master and are taught as a post-master study to go into BI, business intelligence. And they also take part in our business simulation, and they also do Celonis. And what they really like, and I think that especially those students, the older students, are a little bit more keen on getting a certification. And I'm really glad that Celonis offers those certifications very easy, low level, and high, very easy to get a first certification or even more certification if they want to. So, and especially those students are very glad that there are, so the part-time students or those students who are really already working, they really like to have those certifications.
Yeah, it's a good incentive.
So that's why they like about it, and they just like to play with it.
And it's amazing to see that. I mean, it's the best learning approach, I guess, because they really take a lot of things away from it, and it's also a very individual and customized learning approach. So whether there's someone that usually has to really read all the things to memorize them and others have to hear them, and like you have different learner types, but then you give them a tool and you give them also a context and a setup to play within, that is just perfect to really give them all the learning experiences that they need.
Yeah, that's the difference, because, for example, one of our colleagues said, well, first I always explain to my students how the purchasing process is, how the sales process is, how the financial processes are, and all the processes they did. And now they said, and now colleagues ask, well, they're only in financial or only in sales. And they don't see the other processes. No, that's right. But they really learn it. They really feel it. And there's a big difference in memorizing all the processes just by heart, but don't feel them. They're not internalize them. So I think it's much better to have one process really into you, and then you can copy that to any other situation, than just knowing by theory all the processes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. So if we have all that, what's next for you? Like, how do you further evolve that program, or are there like any things that you want to explore in the future?
Well, of course, we are going to do more. The more projects we have, the more operational we will get. By the way, we also, for example, did for the production. So the production departments are also have some operational use, but we will do more and more. So by having new development projects, automatically we will have more operational use. And you advise us to start using the action engine. We will use that. We'll try to discover it. We'll ask you or ask your manuals to use, and I will give next upcoming semester students the assignment. Well, research it. What is possible with it? How can we use it for our company? What are the first steps to do? So we are going to figure out. I don't know yet. I think it is promising, but we'll see, and we'll try to do that. By the way, if anyone seeing this video or seeing this conversation likes to get in contact with us or come to our school or have a Zoom meeting to explain things, that would be nice. And also what also would be nice, since our data are not from real companies, but very realistic, everyone else is free to use our data, to use the connection that we have to our data. Of course, you should keep in mind it is almost real, and it is not a real school example, but it is a realistic example. So you can play with those data, and you can also get in contact with us. I also had with the UCC Munich.
It's Clemens and Boris from the UCC in Munich. Yeah.
With Clemens, we discussed the possibility of people from other UCCs or students from other schools researching our data, giving us an advice to improve.
Cool.
And then our students can do the improvement, but they can also ask our students, well, we see different ways of production. Why? Is there a wrong and a right way, or do you really have several ways of production?
Yeah.
So let them ask questions to our students. That would be nice.
That's a brilliant idea, and it also kind of strengthened the collaboration between the schools, and that's a great way, because I mean, with all the platforms and all the data sets that we're now using in teaching and learning, collaboration across institutions is actually easier because we have those accessible platforms. So this is really a very, very good opportunity, and thank you so much for sharing that. And I can definitely also advise everyone to get in touch with you and listen.
You're always welcome.
At the examples and really learn from you, because I can still remember my first time when I visited your school and one of the live classes, and it's such an incredible experience to see the students working in those departments and really being like a company themselves, and then looking at the tool. It's and
being proud of what they're doing.
Yeah. It's very, very cool to see that. So yes, thank you so much, Dirk-Jan, for sharing the insights and the examples and what you learned from it. It has been a pleasure to talk to you again, and I hope to collaborate even more in the future and make that system even better as it is already. Thank you.
So do we. Thank you so much.